Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be bringing you my wrap-up for the week ending on October 26th, 2024. As part of my participation in Victober, I read Oscar Wilde's play Lady Windermeres Fan this week, which is included in this book, The Importance of Being Earnest and Other Plays. And I read Earnest last week. I read Lady Windermere's Fan this week. This play was first performed in 1892 in St. James Theatre in London, and it was first published in 1893. The play is another one of Wilde's social comedies. All of the action of the play takes place within a 24-hour period. It tells the story of Lady Windermere, who thinks her husband is having an affair with another woman. She has been told by a rather gossipy friend that her husband has been seen with this woman, Mrs. Erlin, a woman of a scandalous reputation who seems to have no known family relations. Lady Windermere then discovers that her husband has in fact been making financial payments to this woman. She confronts her husband with her suspicions, and he adamantly denies that he is having an affair. He is insistent that this woman be invited to Lady Windermere's birthday ball that very night against his wife's wishes. Because she believes that her husband is having an affair, Lady Windermere then makes her own plans to leave her husband for another man who has professed his love to her. Lady Windermere swears that if Mrs. Erlin comes to her party, she will hit her across the face with the new fan that her husband has just given her as a birthday gift. Mrs. Erlin's true identity is the central mystery of the play. Who is she, and what is the true nature of her relationship to several characters in the play? This is a play about Victorian attitudes toward morality. The rather snooty upper-class characters in the play all have very clear ideas about what is moral or good. The very young Lady Windermere is a well-respected woman, and she's perceived as a good woman, and she believes that she should only have to associate with other good and moral characters. There can be no gray areas, no middle ground. She feels quite justified in her rigid morality. But then the rest of the play shows her that there are most definitely gray areas. Good people can be mistaken for bad people and vice versa. And sometimes people who have done bad things can still be good people. Early in the play, Lady Windermere says that a bad person can never be forgiven for bad deeds. This rigidity causes another character to call her a Puritan, and it is this attitude that has almost disastrous consequences in her life. Another important theme in the play relates to the uses and misuses of language, both the spoken word and the written word. Language is often misused in this play in such a way that it does not lead to better communication, but rather it leads to deep misunderstandings among characters. Lady Windermere misunderstands what she is reading in her husband's bank records, and that almost causes disastrous events to occur. She is also misled to believe that her husband is having an affair due to idle gossip, rather than relying on what she knows to be true about her husband. Lady Windermere also relies on a written letter to tell her husband that she is leaving him for another man, rather than talking to him face to face. Her letter, however, is not received by its intended recipient, and rather it falls into the hands of her perceived nemesis. Wilde shows us that there are many ways in which both the spoken and the written language can be unreliable. There is also a running idea throughout the play that keeping some words unspoken at times is also the way to maintain happiness and equilibrium in families. Lady Windermere's fan of the title is the major symbol of the play. This birthday gift is a fashionable accessory used by women, by ladies in social situations, as a way both to hide their faces and also to appear more ladylike. The fan in this play takes on many other important meanings. At one point, it's even thought of as a potential weapon. It becomes the object around which many important aspects of the plot revolve. I read this play immediately after reading Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, one of my favorite comedies of all time. At first, I thought that Lady Windermere's Fan was a bit of a letdown. It's not the comedy that Importance of Being Earnest was by any means. This play deals with some darker issues. But upon thinking about it further, I am starting to appreciate it much more. Wilde offers his critique of the society of his day here. This play doesn't have the same kind of witty and skillful wordplay that The Importance of Being Earnest has. It does poke fun at aspects of Victorian society, but not in as humorous or as farcical a way as Wilde was able to do in The Importance of Being Earnest. In continuing my Victober reading of Oscar Wilde, I also read Wilde's only novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is considered a Gothic horror novel, and I read this both for Victober and also for the spooky, scary skeleton Halloween Readathon. This is the story of a young man, Dorian Gray, who is described as being very beautiful. His friend, Basil Hallward, an artist, paints Dorian's portrait, and this painting becomes the greatest masterpiece of his career, perhaps because Hallward is so completely infatuated with Dorian's physical beauty. Dorian meets Lord Henry Wotton, or Harry, through Basil Hallward. Dorian becomes completely captivated by Harry's ideas about beauty, pleasure, and sensual fulfillment. Determined to stay young and beautiful forever, Dorian expresses a willingness, in effect, to sell his soul for eternal beauty if the portrait could age instead of him. As the novel progresses, Dorian lives an increasingly dissolute life in which he gratifies all of his impulses. While others age naturally around him, he does not. Instead, the figure in the painting begins to age and to show every sign of corruption and sinfulness that Dorian commits. In his life of absolute hedonism and self-gratification, Dorian becomes something of a monster, destroying others right and left, all the while remaining, at least on the outside, looking like this absolutely beautiful, youthful picture of perfection. The portrait, which should have captured a particular moment in time, instead becomes hideous and vile and rotten. It becomes an outward manifestation of the absolute rot and corruption in Dorian's soul. The tale is something of a rewriting of the Faustian bargain, in which the protagonist makes a bargain with the devil. In this case, Lord Henry, or Harry, is the devilish character who corrupts the innocence of Dorian, telling him never to resist temptation. I had mixed reactions to this novel. I did not feel as if it was brilliantly written. In places, the prose feels wooden. The dialogue can feel stilted at times. There are several talky chapters in which mostly Harry and Dorian discuss Dorian's beauty and Harry's rather shallow philosophy of hedonism. And these chapters make for a very slow to develop narrative. But once Dorian makes the Faustian bargain and the portrait begins to alter, to reflect the corruption in all of these hideous ways, then the narrative quickly picks up and builds toward a very suspenseful and horrifying ending. I also finished this week Grady Hendrix' Horrorstor. And I read this for the spooky, scary skeleton Halloween readathon. This is a somewhat traditional haunted house story, but it's been transplanted to a major retail store. The store in the novel is called Orsk, O-R-S-K, which is meant to be an IKEA knockoff. A group of retail workers find themselves staying overnight in the store to see if they can discover who has been performing really disgusting acts of vandalism in the store at night. The characters are a somewhat motley crew of store personnel, plus a homeless man named Carl, who was just found, trying to sleep in the store. And he's been apparently doing this for several nights. They all join forces to find out what's going on in the store. We learn that there was a nightmarish prison on the grounds of the store a long time ago, where inmates were subjected to the most horrific punishments. It turns out that the warden and the inmates still make their presence known. I'm not going to say any more than that about the plot. The novel satirizes the cult-like culture in large retail stores. And though that part was very funny, as I've said in many videos, I am really terrified of reading serious horror. Parts of this book were gross. The prison scenes were gruesome. But I was able to read this book. I have heard it called cozy horror, and I don't think I would go that far. It didn't feel cozy to me in any way. To me, T. Kingfisher maybe is a cozy horror writer, if there is even such a thing as cozy horror. I was a little scared sometimes, especially when reading at night. I was definitely repulsed by certain scenes in this novel, but I also found myself laughing out loud at some other parts. I'm still very curious about Grady Hendrix as a writer, and I think that I am going to try another one of his novels after this one. So that's what I've completed this week. I am hoping to read one more spooky story before the end of the month, but we'll see. I have kind of a plan to read an Agatha Christie ghost story, but we'll see if I can get that finished this week. I also completed a video this week for my new series on books I loved to teach, and I did episode 3, which was on Frankenstein, which was a good spooky choice for this month. And I returned to Poetry Thursday, and I made a video of the Victorian poet and novelist Thomas Hardy. I shared several of his more famous poems. My next video will most likely be my November reading plans. I have a couple of events that I'm hoping to participate in, and just a few projects of my own that I'm working on. So hopefully I'll be able to talk about all of those things in my next video. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.